In 2002, thousands of black security officers guarded Los Angeles' most prestigious buildings. Nearly 70% were African American, working in isolation and under constant harassment while securing the economic engine of Los Angeles. The Service Employees International Union began organizing to bring these workers into a union, but they faced a challenge. The union needed to rebuild trust with the black community, still hurt by the loss of union janitorial jobs in previous decades. This series of interviews gives some insight into the monumental task of getting the union recognized. How did your organization become involved in the Security Officers Unionization campaign?
Our organization is the African American Culture Center, US. And there's two organizations there, the Culture Center itself, but the organization US. And US is a social and culture change organization dedicated to cultural revolution, political struggle, and bringing good in the world. And what happened is we organized around culture as a unifying, comprehensive conception of our practice. We see culture as the totality of thought and practice by which a people creates itself, celebrates, sustains, and develops itself, and introduces itself to history and humanity. And that occurs on essentially 7 levels. That is history, religion, social organization, economic organization, political organization, creative production, which is your art, music, literature, and dance, and also ethos, the collective psychology that you achieve as a result of practice on these other levels. So you see that economic organization is fundamental to our struggle. We also are students of Haji Malcolm X, and Haji Malcolm said that wherever a black person is a battle line, that whether we're in the north or the south, the east or the west, you and I are in a country that is a battle line for all of us. And therefore, we and us said, everywhere a battle line, every day a call to struggle. And so we worked with the AFL-CIO in voter registration, get out to vote, organizing. We worked with the A. Philip Randolph Institute, and we worked with the Welfare Rights Organization, building power for the community, within and for the community. And then in the 21st century, when we began to look at things, we say that the labor era is going to be one of the critical battlefronts for us to involve ourselves in. And so we began actively seeking out relationships with people working on economic issues. And so that's how it brings us to the Security Officers Campaign and the coalition that we built in order to pursue and win that struggle.
What were the key issues and demands of the security officers that were seeking to unionize?
The 3 basic areas of interest and issue. The first was justice for the security officer. Second, respect for the community. And third, safety for the public. And so in terms of justice, we're talking about just wages, benefits, conditions. The security officers had no rights, no benefits, and poor wages. And they were worked in very immoral and unjust ways. And the question was, how do we achieve justice for them? And 70% of them were black people. And so black people were involved as members of our community, and the community embraced them. And so then we made it a respect for the community, so that it's not simply an economic justice issue, it's also a racial issue, a community issue, because the life and health and prosperity of our members are key to the health and prosperity and life of our community. So the community demanded respect for the workers, their right to have a living wage, to work in conditions that were safe, and to also have benefits, and also finally to be able to unionize so that they can be protected. And so our interest in them is as members of our community, because their flourishing and development is key to the community's one. And then the third issue was public safety. It was such a contradiction, we pointed out to the city and to the real estate and corporations, that you can't say that you're for security and the people that are giving security are insecure themselves. Insecure in terms of their wages, insecure in terms of their benefit, insecure in terms of their life, not being able to plan their future in dignity affirming, life enhancing ways. So the idea that you can have public safety from people that you are making insecure is a contradiction. It's not only immoral and unjust, it's a rational contradiction. And so the question was, how do we get justice for the security officers, respect in terms of social and racial justice for the community, and at the same time provide the kind of public safety that we were talking about? People coming to work tired, overworked, right? And unalert and ill-trained. That was another problem, is that the security officers weren't trained in many cases to do the work they were compelled to do. So part of our struggle was to make sure they got living wages, adequate changes, and the benefits that they need to have a secure life themselves.
What were some of the strategies used to achieve victory?
Those are some of the classic strategies always used. We say that transformation depends upon four things: education, mobilization, organization, and confrontation. So the first thing was to educate ourselves to what is going on, to do the research, right? So we can make the argument and teach other people. Also educating ourselves by questioning and talking with and having conversation with the security officers themselves and ask, where do they stand? How do they feel about that? And if we get involved in a campaign, are they for that? And do they want us to do that? And so this kind of education is a mutual education where we reach out and are informed by the people that we're going to work with. And then there's education for the community, to let the community know that this is an issue that involves them. And this is one of the things, one of our great labor leaders, Nana A. Philip Randolph. And when I say Nana, that's an honorific term. So Nana means the honored one. So Nana A. Philip Randolph, who's a major labor leader and, is a founder of the Sleeping Car Porter Union, he argued that one of the most important things for both the union and the community is to build common ground so that the issues that the union faces are issues that the community sees as its own. And the same with the union. The union has to support those who support them. And so it was building that kind of relationship was the next thing, is to build that kind of relationship in terms of organization. But we have to mobilize, get people, get active, get angry, what we call righteous struggle, right? Dr. King called it divine dissatisfaction. Make sure they know we don't like what's going on. We're angry about things, and we're not going to sit on the side and mourn. We're going to move. We're going to organize. So first we educate. So education, second, mobilization, and third, organization, building networks and structures that house and advance our interests. We did a lot of that. And so we build networks with, number one, the churches, right? After we deal with the security officers and build that kind of community there, we go to the churches. Churches played a major role in this. Community organizations, the unions themselves. And that is why it's so important for us to see that. We have an organization now we'll get to in a minute called the Black Community Clergy and Labor Alliance that came out of that. And we say first the community, of and for the community, right? By the community. Second, you said clergy. Clergy plays a major role. And then finally, labor, the unions, and building that network. And then finally, confronting, get into an action, close it down, we said. We marched in the rain. We went into buildings. We refused to move until we got an agreement. And so that kind of struggle, right? But the key to it, of course, is building relations. The hub and hinge on which the whole of human life turns is building right relationship. Right relationships first with the people that are struggling. So that's a security officer. Right relationships with the community. Right relations with the clergy. Right relationship with other community organizations, institutions, and activists. And right relationship with the unions, and right relationship with alliances. with allies that we're going to have. And then confrontation, as to say again, and refusing, having a radical refusal to be defeated, to be dispirited, to be diverted, and always having a victorious consciousness, as my colleague, Dr. Molefi Asante said.
What were the central elements that led to the victory?
So the first and foremost was a compelling idea, the compelling just cause. Justice for the worker, justice for a member of our community, justice because they deserve that, right? They have a right to a decent wage. They have a right to a decent life. We can't talk about the dignity of the human person and deny them a decent life, the life in which they can live a full and meaningful life, that they can take care of their family, right? Send their children to school, and even have recreation, because we need to rest and recreate ourselves. And in fact, the word recreation or recreation is just that, to recreate ourselves, time to revitalize ourselves, regenerate ourselves, and at the same time, lift ourselves up and be able to reflect about the future, where we go for. Because humans are always in the process of developing. We can't be serious for human beings without the capacity to stop, to rest, to ponder. What does it mean to be here at this point in this time? And where do we go from here? And we have to have the conditions for thinking. We always said, there's a teaching that says, humans do not live by bread alone. But our argument is they can only come to that conclusion after they've eaten. So people need the material conditions to think right. And we always said our freedom struggle had two elements to it: the struggle to be ourselves and to free ourselves. To free ourselves from domination, deprivation, and degradation, and to be ourselves as African people without penalty, without punishment, without oppression, right? And to develop ourselves, flourish, and come into the fullness of ourselves in all our sacredness and soulfulness. Then, if I can go, another thing that was important was our leadership. It was excellent leadership from the community, from the clergy, from community activists, from the unions. People worked together, and they were seasoned soldiers. And they were all seasoned soldiers. When I say all seasoned, they weren't summer soldiers, springtime soldiers. They were all seasoned soldiers, what we call in our organization constant soldiers, regardless of the season. But they were also expert. They had a history behind them of experience, and they had a moral commitment to see this to the end. Another thing has to be is how we involve the community, how the community, little by little, and then finally, in a very strong way, got involved in this and pushed it to the finish. And the final thing, of course, is this sense we have of the righteousness, again, as I started out with a just call, the righteousness of our struggle and our radical refusal to have anything except victory.
What were some of the concerns about holding the gains made as part of this effort?
Yeah, there's several. The first was the concern of the workers, right? We had this concern, and some of our people talked about and discussed it, and certainly our organization discussed it, is that we would win the struggle but lose the jobs, win the struggle but lose the leadership, win the struggle but lose the security we've gained in struggle. That's a big thing, and that's still a struggle here, right? Because what happens is that even when we first started, people wanted to take control of our victory. We argued that the majority of the security officers, when they vote, they are African American. They should have not only the control of the union, but the leadership, right? That's a majority. I mean, that's what we call democracy, right? But little by little, right, they were pushed out of that. And the gains that they made, the victory they had, began to go to other people. And there's a lot of things that have to do that, which brings us to the corporate concern. See, the corporate concern, they never give up. And what they're in it for is for profit, not for the people, but for profit. And one of the things that they like to do is divide and rule, right? Divide and rule. And one of the things they do is play the racial card, right? And they separate the races. They separate the communities. I say peoplehood, okay? They separate the peoples and make them struggle against each other rather than struggling against their oppressor. And so that's still an ongoing thing. Is where do black people fit in this to make sure that the victory we gain doesn't benefit everybody else except us. I'm looking for, and all of us are looking for, a concept and practice of inclusive good. Can we have that? I know in a capitalist society and a vulgarly individualistic society, people say you can't do that. But I have to believe it. My ancestors believed that. And so I have to believe it, and they taught that. This is a moral position. It's not just a money position. It's a moral position that each person has a right to a good life. They have to have a good life. And each person has to be respected as a unique and equally valid and valuable way of being human in the world. And we have to provide the material condition for a good life for everyone, right? And we got to resist the corporations that say we can't do that. The third thing we had was a concern to keep the Black United Front and the coalition we had built during this struggle. And we were able to do that by building the Black Community Clergy and Labor Alliance. And many of the ministers that were the leaders, in fact, most of them began to help found the Black Community Clergy and Labor Alliance. In the first, I was honored to be vice chair along with Nana Larry Aubrey, who was a union man from a long ways back. And also our chair at the time was Reverend Eric Lee, who was at that time head of SCLC. And SCLC, of course, played a major role in all its leadership that was happening there. So that was a concern, and we were built that, and we continue to build that. And so it's good to have this recognition and honor. And we got our organization especially played a major role, the organization, us, the African American Culture Center, and we were given an award for that by SEIU, whose president then was Faith Coolbrey. And and then, of course, one of the other things that we wanted to do was to strengthen multicultural alliances, right? We always say black and brown, but we need to say black, brown, red, and yellow. We need to always consider the Native Americans. We will never have a just and good society until we come to terms with the legitimate claims of Native American peoples. But we can't leave the Asians out either. We have to have all five of the groups, which Native American, African, Latino, Asian, and European. Usually it's just a European. And then for a long time we say black and white. Now we say black and brown. But we need to say all the groups, right? And that's an important thing because this is a multiculturalism beyond food, fashion, and festival. It is a respect for diversity that demonstrates itself in freedom and justice and equity, right? And shared power with everyone. It's a right and responsibility of each people to speak its own special cultural truth and to make its own unique contribution to how this society is reconceived and reconstructed. And if we build this alliance, and we've been building it in different forms, but we still need to strengthen it and expand it, and it means that we have to have principles. And the three principles for this that we've been operating from: mutual respect, without that, nothing; mutual support, and mutual benefit. And if we can do that, we can all build the good, just, and caring society we all want and deserve to live in and leave as a legacy for those who come after us.
OASC proudly recognizes a fraction of those responsible for the success of the SEIU Black Security Officers Unionization campaign in Los Angeles, a landmark example of how labor organizing can be a tool for racial and economic justice. It not only transformed the lives of thousands of Black security officers, but also reshaped the labor movement's approach to addressing systemic inequality. Its impact continues to inspire campaigns that prioritize equity, dignity, and the empowerment of underrepresented workers.